Hi everyone. In this video we're going to go over our last example of doing the simplex method. The difference this time is we are going to have one extra constraint. This is going to make our tableau a little bit bigger this time. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So again, just like before, we are going to add our slack variables to all of these. The only difference is this time we're going to have a third slack variable because we have a third constraint. And then all 5 of our variables will be greater than or equal to 0. For the profit equation, we're going to do the exact same thing as before. No difference there. We're just moving the variables over to the other side by just making them negative, and we have it set equal to 0. Okay, so our tableau is going to be a little bit bigger this time. So we are going to have x1, x2, s1, s2, and s3, p, and then our number. And this time, all of our slack variables are going to go over on that left-hand side. All right, let's go ahead and start filling them in. So our first one was 2, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 80. Second one, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 56. Third one, 1, 2, 0, 0, 1, 0, 96. And then our profit equation, -30, -40, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. All right, let's go ahead and start by finding our pivot. So for the column, biggest number that's negative on the bottom. For our row, we take the numbers to the right and divide them by the numbers in our column. And then we pick the smallest. So this 2 right here is going to be our pivot. All right, so the row operation to turn that into a 1 is going to be row 3 divided by 2 will be our new row 3. All right. At this point, I'm hoping that you're a little more comfortable with row operations. So instead of you having to watch me remake these every single time, I am going to go ahead and skip to the new one, which you will see right here. So as you can see, I divided row 3 by 2. We have our 1, which means now we have to turn all 3 of these numbers into zeros, because remember, we need zeros above and below our 1 in that entire column, which means we are going to actually need 3 row operations. To get the first one into a 0, we need to do -1 times row 3 plus row 1 replaces row 1. Next, we need -1 times row 3 plus row 2 replaces row 2. And lastly, we're going to need +40 row 3 plus row 4 replaces row 4. All right? So those are the 3 row operations we're going to need to do. So again, hoping you're a little more comfortable with row operations. So I'm going to go ahead and do all 3 of those row operations, and you will see the result right here. Alright, so after doing these 3 row operations, here is our new tableau. Again, I highly recommend just going off to the side, doing the scratch work, just so you don't make any mistakes along the way. Alright, now we check the bottom. Unfortunately, there is a negative. As soon as you see that negative, that means we are going to have to go ahead and find another pivot. So again, we are going to start by doing the column. Only one column with a negative, so we know which column it is right away. Then we're going to divide each of these numbers on the right by the numbers in our column. Okay, 32 divided by 3 halves is going to be 64 over 3. Now, just so we know, it's approximately 21.3, just so we know a basic idea of what that number actually is, so we can compare it to the other ones. The second row is going to be 16. The third row is 96. So this second row right here is our pivot row, which means this 1/2 is going to be our new pivot. So the operation, we can either think about it as dividing it by 1/2, or that's the same as just multiplying it by 2. So if we do 2 times row 2 replaces row 2, that will turn our pivot into a 1. Again, you can also do row 2 divided by 1/2. It's the same exact thing. So if we go ahead and do that operation now, here will be our next tableau. And don't forget that we did change out our entering and exiting variables along the way as well. So don't forget to do that part. Alright, we have our 1, which means we need the zeros above and below it. Alright, here are the row operations we're going to need to use. -3 halves times row 2 plus row 1 replaces row 1. -1/2 row 2 plus row 3 replaces row 3. And +10 times row 2 plus row 4 replaces row 4. Alright, again, I'm going to go ahead and do these off screen, but they're done just like our other row operations. Let your calculator do most of the work. Don't try to deal with all of those fractions yourself. Alright, and here's what it's going to look like. This would be our final simplex tableau, because we don't have any negatives on the bottom, so we know we are done with it. Then we just have to figure out what our final answer is. So if we're looking for x1, x2, and p, x1 is 16, x2 is 40, and p is 2080. So we have a max of 2080 at 1640. Again, the hardest part about this is usually all of those row operations. Just make sure to take your time, be careful, try to really let your calculator do most of the work. The rest of it isn't too bad, just very lengthy. Alright, with that said, this one is going to be a shorter video. In the next video, we're going to do one word problem and solve it by Simplex, and then that will be the end of these. So I'll see you in that last part of these. Thank you.